Our trip around America continues. This visit is to the Adams House, or Peacefield as it was known. The boxwoods you see lining the paths here, they say date back to 1731. John and Abigail Adams moved here in 1788, and this house and property stayed in the family till 1927. This is the carriage house. It was built in 1873. Beautiful structure. Most of the visitor center information was located here. Unfortunately, the main house was closed because of COVID, but it was still neat to walk around the property. And this building you can barely see that's covered by all the ivy is the Stone Library, built in 1870. It has over 12,000 books that were owned by the Adams family. And this really neat old black walnut was actually planted by John Quincy Adams in 1830. Pretty sure these apple trees have been around for a long time, and amazing that one's still alive. Then our trip took us to the Minuteman National Historic Park. This is where it all started, April 19th, 1775. The shot heard around the world. This brick building here is the visitor center. It was actually built in 1911 by descendants of Major John Buttrick. He was the one that actually gave the command to fire to the colonial soldiers there at the Old North Bridge. It was a neat house. It kind of surprised us that a house built in the 1900s would be on such a historic landmark. But it is interesting as well that John Buttrick's family had lived in that area since 1635. The Hancock cannon is actually a brass cannon. That was actually one of the cannons that the colonials were hiding at the time, and the British soldiers that came through the area were actually looking for that and several other cannons, along with black powder and cannonballs and muskets that were believed to have been hidden up there. Though the Old North Bridge has been rebuilt over the years, this is an actual plank from the original Old North Bridge. So this is the house that Major John Buttrick actually lived in at that time, and it is right across the street from the visitor center. So this field overlooks, you can kind of see the bridge in the background. This is where the colonials would have gathered to stop the British soldiers from coming across the bridge. They were on the north side, and the British soldiers were coming from the south. Still such an unbelievable feeling to actually be physically at these spots, knowing what happened and the history behind them. And this is where history actually happened. It is amazing to me that, you read those books in school and you learn the history, but to actually be there and physically see it and walk the same spots that those men did so long ago, and the events that occurred here changed our whole world. And this is a monument to the British soldiers on the south side of the bridge. Not too far from there, this is the Old Manse. That building's been around and has witnessed all these events that happened. The house was built in 1770 for Reverend William Emerson. He was the chaplain to the Provincial Congress. He was also the grandfather of Ralph Waldo Emerson, who did live in the house for a short time. That house has had a storied history. In 1842, Nathaniel Hawthorne rented the house. Just so much history to see. And amazing to actually be there. If those walls could talk. It's also amazing to see this map that showed how many different communities had militiamen that responded that fateful night. This is one of the trails in the park that lead through what has been known as Battle Road. And on this section of road is where Paul Revere was actually captured the night of his fateful ride. William Dawes and Dr. Samuel Prescott, who were with him, actually escaped that night, and Paul Revere was the one that was captured. Kind of interesting that he gets all of the storylines and the other two kind of get forgotten. And this is the site of the old Nelson house that was one of the casualties of this battle. The house was burnt down during the fighting. And this is the Captain William Smith house. He was the leader of the Lincoln Militia. This house was built in 1692. During the battle, a British soldier was wounded, and they brought him into the house to treat him. Unfortunately, he died, and the family buried him here on the property. It's a really nice trail they have in the park, and we saw hikers and joggers and bicyclists using it quite extensively. This is the Hartwell Tavern. It's got kind of a neat history. The house itself was built between 1732 and 1733. In 1756, the Hartwell family applied for and was given a license to operate an inn/tavern. It stayed in business to the 1780s before the tavern was closed down. But interestingly, this house was continuously lived in till 1967. In 1967, the National Park Service purchased it and refurbished it back to its 1780s appearance. But just amazing that the house was lived in for so long. And amazing how short the ceilings were.
How many times have you read Little Women?
More than I can count.
Is it weird to be here?
It's one of my favorite books growing up, and I still love it, and I've read it several times as an adult.
For all you Louisa May Alcott fans out there, this is where she actually wrote her book, Little Women. The original house was built in 1650, and her father moved another house down and combined the two to make a bigger house. Some of the neighbors, visitors they had regularly included Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau.